At Christmas dinner, Grandma smiled at my parents saying, "I hope he enjoys the car you got him with my money." I froze and asked, "What money?" Silence filled the room. Then I found out the car wasn't the only secret they hid from me. What if I told you that for years, my own family, my parents, my siblings, treated me like I was invisible, like an afterthought, all while secretly siphoning away nearly $200,000 that was meant for me? The truth hit me like a gut punch, and what came next? Well, that's where the real story begins. My name's Edward, I'm 27, and for as long as I can remember, I've felt like the ghost at the family table. Not the troublemaker, not the golden child, just invisible. My younger brother, Daniel, and my older sister, Claire, were always front and center. If Daniel scraped by with AC, it was a miracle. If Claire landed a summer job, the entire extended family heard about it. But if I got an A, it was just expected. My small victories? Always brushed under the rug. For years, I told myself it didn't matter. I poured myself into work, kept my distance, and swore I'd build a life where their opinions were irrelevant. But you know how it goes. Old wounds don't stay buried, especially when family, money, and secrets get mixed up. This past Christmas, after a long time away, I actually decided to go to the big family dinner. I wasn't thrilled, but my grandmother, Grandma Ruth, my dad's mom, she'd been calling me for weeks. She's the only one who ever truly saw me, who never made me feel lesser. I couldn't say no to her. So I showed up with a bottle of wine and expectations low enough to trip over. The house was exactly as always, twinkling lights, the comforting smell of roast ham, muffled Christmas music mixing with laughter. It should have felt warm, but the second I stepped inside, that old chill set in. Like I'd walked into a play, everyone knew their part, and mine was the one they barely acknowledged. Daniel was first, leaning smugly in the doorway, twirling his car keys. "Oh, hey, look who decided to show up," he drawled, that same annoying smirk he's had since high school plastered on his face. "Don't worry, we saved you a seat. Hope you don't mind. It's at the end of the table." Claire chimed in from across the room with a fake little laugh. "Well, at least he made it on time this year. That's progress." My parents didn't even look up right away. My dad gave a quick, dismissive nod, and my mom just said, "Edward, you brought wine? Good. Put it on the counter, don't open it though. We'll save that one for later." I bit back the urge to roll my eyes. Same routine, same subtle digs. Just get through the night, I told myself, for Grandma. Dinner went pretty much as you'd expect. My mom bragging about Claire's new promotion. My dad gushing about Daniel's new car, a shiny new one, he'd only just gotten it. And me? I got one vague question about my tech consulting work before the conversation moved on. Never mind, I'd been doing pretty well, building my own client base. To them, it was just Edward doing something with computers. I let it slide. I always let it slide. Until dessert. That's when Grandma Ruth, bless her heart, leaned over with her soft smile and said the sentence that would shatter everything. "I hope you love the car your parents bought you with the money I gave." The room froze. Forks stopped clinking. My parents exchanged a look so fast, I almost thought I imagined it. My chest tightened. "What money?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Grandma blinked, confused. "The money I gave them for you, dear. Last spring. I told them it was for you to get something reliable, since your old car was giving you trouble." Her words hung in the air like a live bomb. I didn't even realize my hands were gripping the edge of the table. My old car had been a beat-up Honda Civic that barely survived last winter, and I'd scraped together my own savings to replace it months ago. I thought I'd handled it all on my own. But now, sitting across from Daniel, who was suddenly very interested in his plate, the pieces clicked into place. My mom coughed lightly, trying to smooth it over. "Oh, Mother, you must be mistaken. You know how things get. Finances moving around," but Grandma shook her head. "No, I remember clearly. I withdrew $25,000 and gave it to you and Richard. You said you'd set it aside for Edward." My dad's jaw tightened. He muttered, "We'll talk about this later." That's when Daniel, like the snake he always was, chuckled under his breath. "Guess the cat's out of the bag." He didn't even look ashamed. My stomach dropped. That shiny new car he'd been flaunting all evening in the driveway, it suddenly looked different. It looked like my car, bought with money meant for me. I couldn't speak for a moment. The silence around the table was heavy, broken only by Claire shifting uncomfortably in her chair. "Wait," I finally said, looking at my parents. "You used Grandma's money. Money that was meant for me, to buy Daniel that car?" My dad snapped. "Enough, Edward. This isn't the time or the place. My mom quickly added, we did what we thought was best for the family. Daniel needed a reliable vehicle for his commute. My head was spinning. Best for the family. That phrase was their favorite shield, always meaning best for everyone but me. I looked at Grandma, her face pale with shock. Is that true? She asked my mom, her voice trembling. You told me it went to Edward. Daniel leaned back, grinning. Well, technically it did benefit him. Now I can drive him around if he needs it. He thought he was being clever. My hands curled into fists under the table. I wanted to yell, to flip the table, to finally unload years of resentment. But all I could do was sit there, my face burning. Grandma whispered, oh Richard, how could you? My dad's voice grew hard. It's done, Mother. What's the point of dragging this out in front of everyone? That's when something inside me shifted. For years, I had been the quiet one, the one who swallowed the insults, who played my part to keep the peace. But in that moment, I realized the peace had never included me. And worse, this wasn't just about the car. The way they avoided my eyes, the way Daniel smirked, the way Claire bit her lip like she knew more, something told me this wasn't the first time. This was just the first time they got caught. I sat back slowly, forcing myself to stay calm, even as my chest thudded with anger. If that's how it is, I said quietly, my voice eerily steady. Then I guess I should find out what else you've been keeping from me. The room went deathly silent again, every pair of eyes on me. My parents stiffened. Daniel's smirk faltered for a split second, and Claire wouldn't meet my gaze. That's when I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The silence stretched too long, so my mom tried to fill it. Edward, you're overreacting. It was one car. Daniel needed it. And you? Well, you're always so independent. You managed just fine on your own. Her words stung more than I wanted to admit. Managed just fine on your own. That was her polite way of saying, we don't have to give you anything because you'll survive without it. I forced myself to breathe evenly, but inside, I could feel the anger climbing my throat. Daniel finally broke the quiet with a smug grin. Don't take it personally, Ed. You don't even drive much. You work from home, right? I actually need the car. You'd just let it sit in the driveway. He said it so casually, as if I hadn't spent years saving every penny to get rid of my old Civic, as if I didn't know the value of hard work. He had no idea the sacrifices I'd made to stand on my own 2 feet. I stared at him, and in that moment, I realized he wasn't just spoiled. He genuinely believed he deserved everything handed to him. Grandma's fork clattered against her plate. This is disgraceful, she muttered. My dad quickly cut in, his voice sharp. Enough. Let's not ruin dinner. It's Christmas. Edward, you'll get your chance when it's right. This was about timing. Daniel needed a car now. His eyes met mine with that familiar warning look. The one he used when I was a kid to shut me down before I could argue. Only this time, it didn't work. Timing, I repeated slowly. So, what else was about timing? What else was redirected because Daniel or Claire supposedly needed it more than me? I watched my mom's face stiffen. That's when I knew I had hit something real. Claire, who had been quiet until now, shifted uncomfortably. She glanced at my mom, then at me, and said, Edward, don't make this into something it's not. You know how much they've helped you too. Remember when Dad co-signed your apartment lease? That was a big deal. I almost laughed. That was the example she pulled out? My dad had co-signed because the landlord required a guarantor, and even then, he never let me forget it, reminding me every holiday about how I owed him for giving me a roof. Meanwhile, Daniel lived rent-free in their basement for years, and Claire had her graduate school tuition covered entirely by them. But sure, my dad putting his name on a lease was supposed to balance the scales. I leaned back, folding my arms. That's not help, Claire. That's obligation. And it doesn't erase the fact that Grandma's gift for me was stolen. Not borrowed. Stolen. My mom's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping into that tone she used when she wanted to control the room. Edward, you don't understand the sacrifices we've had to make. Everything we do is for this family. Daniel's commute, Claire's education, they benefit everyone. You wouldn't understand because you've always been so focused on yourself. Focused on myself, the words hit like a slap. Was I supposed to apologize for not needing them? For grinding through jobs in college while Claire's tuition was paid? For skipping vacations so I could save enough to buy my own car, while Daniel's was just handed to him with a bow? My stomach churned as I realized they'd twisted the narrative so deeply that in their minds, I was selfish for simply wanting fairness. Grandma wasn't having it. She slammed her palm lightly against the table, surprising everyone. Don't talk to him like that. That money was meant for Edward, not for your convenience. If you thought differently, you should have told me, not lied. The room went quiet again, but this time the silence felt heavy charged. My dad's jaw clenched, his face red. Mother, we will discuss this privately later. You've caused enough embarrassment. But I wasn't done. No, I said, my voice calm, but firm. We're going to discuss it now because something tells me this car isn't the only thing you've taken. Daniel scoffed. What? You think there's some grand conspiracy against you? Don't be paranoid. You're just mad because I finally got something nice. Finally. I shot back. You've been handed everything your whole life, Daniel. Meanwhile, I've been told to manage just fine. Do you even realize Grandma's talking about $25,000? Do you know what that would have done for me last year when I was paying off my student loans? Daniel's smirk faltered just slightly. That flicker of guilt he tried to hide. He knew. He absolutely knew where the money came from, and he didn't care. The rest of dinner turned into a circus. Every time I tried to press the issue, my parents shut me down. My dad muttered about how this wasn't the place. My mom acted like I was overreacting. Claire tried to play mediator, saying I should let it go for now to keep the peace. But Grandma kept throwing me these worried looks, like she was realizing just how deep the favoritism had gone. Later that evening, after the plates were cleared and everyone was lounging in the living room, I caught snippets of conversation. My parents whispering, "What else does he know?" Claire telling Daniel to keep his mouth shut. And Daniel laughing, "He's not going to do anything. He never does." That was the moment I made up my mind. They thought I wouldn't push back. They thought I'd swallow it like I always had. But this time was different. They weren't just dismissing me. They were stealing from me. And if there was one thing I wasn't going to let slide, it was betrayal disguised as family duty. I decided then and there. I was going to find out exactly what else they'd kept from me. And I had a sinking feeling the car was just the beginning. That night, after everyone started drifting home and the house settled into an uneasy quiet, I lingered by the hallway. My parents were in the kitchen, speaking in low voices, clearly assuming I couldn't hear them. I've always had sharp ears, and after years of being treated like an outsider in my own family, I'd learned to pay attention when people thought I wasn't listening. "She shouldn't have said anything about the money," my dad muttered. His tone wasn't guilty. It was irritated, like Grandma had been the one in the wrong. Now Edward's going to start digging. My mom's sigh was weary. He'll get over it. He always does. He'll sulk for a few weeks, but he doesn't have it in him to make a fuss. He's too proud to admit he feels cheated. Their words cut deep, but what hurt more was the ease with which they said them. They didn't see me as their son in that moment. They saw me as a nuisance, someone they could manipulate and dismiss. Then Claire's voice joined in. I hadn't realized she was still there. "You two should have been more careful. Grandma might be old, but she's not stupid. If she starts checking her accounts again, she'll notice the other transfers." I froze. Other transfers? My pulse quickened as I pressed myself against the wall. "Don't worry," my mom said quickly. "We were careful. She only noticed the car because she assumed it was for Edward. Everything else was handled discreetly. Daniel needed help with his down payment, and Claire's tuition wasn't going to pay itself. What were we supposed to do? Say no. I felt the blood drain from my face. My legs felt like they might give out. Down payment. Tuition. My hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms. So, it wasn't just the car. Grandma had given them money for me. Money that could have given me a head start, lightened the weight of loans, allowed me to breathe. Instead, they'd quietly siphoned it away for Daniel's house and Claire's education, all while telling me to manage just fine. My dad's voice was a low growl. "Edward doesn't need to know about any of that. He's always been independent. Like you said, he doesn't have a family to support. He'll be fine." That line, asterisk, "he doesn't have a family to support," asterisk, struck me harder than any insult ever had. I realized then that, in their eyes, I wasn't even a full member of this family. I was the backup plan, the one who didn't deserve investment because I wasn't burdened by dependence. They had twisted independence into punishment, and they had stolen from me to justify it. I barely noticed Grandma appear at my side until she touched my arm. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp, burning with the same realization I was having. She didn't say a word, just shook her head slowly and whispered, "Not here. Not now." I nodded stiffly, though my chest burned with rage. The next day, I couldn't let it go. I needed proof. I went to visit Grandma at her house, and for the first time, she showed me her bank statements. She had been keeping them in a neat folder, something she rarely did on her own. She wasn't meticulous with paperwork, but she knew enough to keep copies when large withdrawals were involved. Together, we sat at her kitchen table as she flipped through the records. My heart sank with every page. There it was. 3 separate transfers over the past 2 years, each one labeled with some vague note from my parents. $25,000 last spring, $40,000 the year before that, another $30,000 a few months later. Grandma explained in a trembling voice, "I thought all of these were for you. Every time I gave them money, they promised it would go toward your future, your debts, your stability, a down payment on a place for you." I believed them. I stared at the numbers, my stomach churning. Nearly $100,000. That's what they had funneled away, smiling at Grandma, promising her it was for me, all while secretly handing it to Daniel and Claire. A cold clarity settled over me. It wasn't just favoritism anymore. It was theft. Betrayal so calculated that I didn't even have words for it. They had looked me in the eye year after year, telling me I was too independent to need help, while using my name to drain money that was meant for me. And the worst part. Grandma's hands trembled as she whispered, "I never would have known if I hadn't mentioned the car. Edward, they lied to me. They used me." That was the moment something broke inside me. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was resolved. This wasn't about one car or even the money itself. This was about the fact that my own parents had turned me into the scapegoat for their greed. And they thought I was too quiet, too compliant to fight back. I looked at Grandma, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. If they think I won't do anything, they're wrong. They've taken enough. This ends now. And in that moment, I knew the next time I sat across from them, the balance of power was going to shift. The days after Christmas felt heavy, like I was walking through fog. I went back to my small apartment in the city, but I couldn't shake the weight pressing on my chest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those numbers on Grandma's bank statements. $25,000 here, $40,000 there, then $30,000. Each withdrawal, another nail hammered into the coffin of trust I'd once had for my parents. Nearly $100,000. Money meant for me. Money that could have wiped away my student loans in a single stroke, or given me a down payment on a place of my own. Money that could have bought me peace of mind after years of scraping by. Instead, it was gone. Poured into Daniel's shiny new car, his down payment on a condo, Claire's tuition, all while I was told to manage fine. I found myself replaying every sacrifice I'd made, nights spent hunched over my laptop in college, taking on freelance work to cover bills while Claire breezed through grad school without debt. The bus rides in the dead of winter because my Civic wouldn't start, while Daniel lounged in the comfort of his parents' house, rent-free. The years of swallowing my pride, telling myself independence was better than owing them anything. And all along, they weren't just ignoring me, they were robbing me too. The betrayal dug deeper the more I thought about it. It wasn't just about money. It was about how little they valued me. They had looked at me, their son, and decided I was the safe one to cheat because I wouldn't cause trouble. They gambled on my silence. And for years, they were right. I started pulling away. Calls from my mom went unanswered. Texts from Claire popped up on my phone. "You okay? You seemed upset the other night." But I couldn't bring myself to respond. What was I supposed to say? That I had proof she'd been complicit in siphoning money from Grandma, that I'd heard her tell my parents they needed to be more careful about their lies? Every word from her felt poisoned. Daniel, of course, didn't bother reaching out. Why would he? He was too busy flaunting his new car, posting pictures of himself leaning against it like he'd earned it. I saw the posts online, each one like a spark to the fire in my chest. He captioned one photo, "Hard work pays off." I nearly broke my phone in half. Hard work. The irony of it made me laugh bitterly in the quiet of my apartment. But in between the bitterness and the rage, something else crept in. A suffocating sadness. Nights stretched long, and I'd catch myself staring at the ceiling, asking questions I didn't want the answers to. Asterisk, why me? Why was I the expendable one? Why didn't they see me as worthy of the same support? Asterisk, I felt like a stranger in my own family. The thought that hurt the most was simple. Maybe they never cared for me the way I thought they did. Maybe all those years of being told to toughen up, to handle things myself, weren't just favoritism. They were proof I was never their priority. There was one night where I broke down completely. I sat at my kitchen table, the bank statements spread out in front of me, and I couldn't stop shaking. I thought about calling Grandma, but I couldn't bring myself to put more weight on her shoulders. She already looked stricken when she realized what they'd done. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water, sat in the silence, and let the anger and sadness wash over me until it felt like my chest was hollow. But hollow or not, something in me shifted during those long nights. I started to write things down, dates, amounts, what I overheard in the kitchen, every scrap of information Grandma had shown me. I created a folder on my computer, labeling documents, saving copies. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I wasn't ready to strike yet. I was still too raw, too broken. But I knew deep down that the planning had begun. At work, I kept my head down, but colleagues noticed I was quieter than usual. My boss even pulled me aside, asking if I was okay. I lied and said I was just tired. In truth, I was exhausted, emotionally drained by the weight of betrayal. Still, my work was the one place I felt control, the one place where effort equaled reward. Unlike at home, Grandma called me a few times during those weeks. Her voice was gentle, but I could hear the guilt in it. "Edward, I never would have let them do this if I had known," she told me one evening. I trusted them, and they took advantage of me, too. I reassured her that it wasn't her fault, though part of me ached at how deeply this cut had spread. She had been used, just like me. Her kindness weaponized. As winter dragged on, I felt like I was living two lives. Outwardly, I was functioning, paying bills, working, going through the motions. Inwardly, I was unraveling, holding on to rage like a lifeline, replaying the betrayal over and over until it hardened into something sharper. I wasn't ready to confront them yet. I wasn't even sure how, but I knew I couldn't stay at the bottom forever. One night, as I sat scrolling through Daniel's latest smug photo, something clicked. I wasn't going to let them define me as the forgotten one anymore. They had stolen from me, lied to me, and laughed at me behind closed doors. But their mistake wasn't in the theft. It was in underestimating me. They thought I would suffer in silence. They thought wrong. And as I closed my laptop that night, I whispered to myself, let them enjoy it now. Their time is coming. The months that followed were the slow turning of a wheel I hadn't realized I'd been pushing for years. At first, I was still carrying the heaviness of betrayal. The weight of knowing my own parents had siphoned nearly $100,000 that should have been mine. But grief has a strange way of reshaping itself. It started as sadness, shifted into anger, and eventually hardened into determination. If they thought I was going to sit in silence, scraping by while they showered Daniel and Claire with everything, then they hadn't been paying attention. I had been silent because I had no choice before. But now I was going to build something that didn't just make me independent. It made me untouchable. Work became my anchor. I threw myself into projects, picking up extra clients, saying yes to contracts I once would have second-guessed. My field, tech consulting, was demanding but flexible. And I discovered that the more I pushed myself, the more doors opened. The skills I'd been quietly building for years suddenly put me in high demand. Startups wanted my advice. Mid-sized companies wanted me to streamline their systems. Word spread, my name started circulating in spaces I hadn't even dreamed of reaching yet. By spring, I wasn't just making enough to cover my bills. I was making more than I ever had. I started paying down my student loans aggressively, watching balances drop month after month. The sense of control it gave me was intoxicating. Every payment was like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been stolen. With that financial momentum, I began thinking differently. Instead of wondering how to survive, I began strategizing about how to grow. I took courses to sharpen my business skills, joined networking groups, and even started mentoring younger consultants. Slowly, I began to build a reputation not just as a worker, but as a leader. People came to me for guidance, advice, referrals. For the first time in my life, I felt what it was like to have influence, and it lit a fire in me. Grandma noticed the change. When I visited her one Sunday afternoon, she clasped my hands and said, "You're shining again, Edward. I can see it in your eyes." I smiled, but there was a part of me she couldn't see. The part that still carried the sharp edge of betrayal. Because as much as I was rising, I couldn't shake the memory of my parents whispering that I would get over it, and Daniel laughing that I'd never do anything. Every milestone I hit, every new contract I signed wasn't just for me. It was a reminder to myself that one day they would see just how wrong they were. Summer rolled in, and with it came opportunities one hadn't imagined. A major client referred me to a corporation looking to overhaul their IT infrastructure, and that single project alone nearly doubled my yearly income. I reinvested the earnings into my own small firm, hiring 2 assistants to handle client onboarding and paperwork. What started as freelance consulting was becoming something bigger, something that could stand on its own. My personal life improved, too. With my finances steady, I moved into a modern apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and space that actually felt like home. I bought a reliable car, not flashy like Daniel's, but one I paid for outright with my own money. Each morning I woke up, I felt a little stronger, a little freer. It wasn't just independence anymore. It was empowerment. And yet, I kept my distance from my family. My mom's calls became more frequent. Her voicemails sprinkled with guilt and passive-aggressive comments. "You never come around anymore, Edward. Your brother and sister miss you. Don't be stubborn." My dad tried his usual sternness when he finally reached me on the phone, saying, "Family is family. You can't just walk away." But I didn't bite. I kept conversations short, polite, controlled. I wasn't going to give them a window into my world. Not yet. Claire, interestingly, seemed torn. She texted occasionally, asking vague questions about my work, hinting at family updates without pushing too hard. Part of me wondered if she regretted her role in the betrayal, or if she was simply keeping tabs. Either way, I kept my guard up. Then came the first hint of a shift in power. One evening, Daniel called me out of the blue. He never called me. His voice was hesitant, and after some small talk, he admitted, "Hey man, I'm having some issues with my condo. Something about the mortgage. I might need some advice." The irony almost made me laugh. The same brother who had gloated about his new car, who had smirked when I found out about the stolen money, was now calling me for help. I didn't gloat. I didn't even let my tone change. I simply said, "Maybe you should ask Mom and Dad. They've been so good at managing things for you." The silence on the other end was delicious. I hung up before he could respond. That night, I sat by my window watching the city lights and realized something important. For years, I'd been the one left out, the one underestimated. But now, I was the one with control. I was the one rising while they were tangled in their own lies and mismanagement. The balance was shifting, and they didn't even see it yet. The thought gave me a calm satisfaction, because when the time came, I wasn't just going to expose what they had done. I was going to make sure they felt it. It was early autumn when the final pieces of my patience began to crystallize into something sharper. By then, my small consulting firm had grown legs of its own. What had once been me alone with a laptop was now a registered business with employees, branded contracts, and even an office space on the 10th floor of a modest, but modern building downtown. I'd gone from scraping by to sending out invoices with amounts that would have stunned me a few years earlier. Clients trusted me. Companies sought me out. I wasn't just getting by anymore. I was building something lasting. And still, I kept quiet. To my family, I was simply doing something with computers. They had no idea how much I'd grown. I wanted it that way. Silence was leverage. The less they knew, the more off balance they'd be when the time came. The real shift began with Grandma again. She called me one afternoon, her voice steady, but tinged with something like resolve. "Edward, I went through my accounts, all of them. And you were right. It wasn't just those 3 transfers. There's more." I drove to her house that evening. She had everything laid out on the dining room table in neat stacks, statements, withdrawal slips, even handwritten notes she'd kept. As we combed through them, my jaw tightened. The total wasn't just shocking, it was infuriating. Over the course of 4 years, my parents had siphoned almost $200,000 under the pretense that it was for me. Some went to Daniel's condo, some to Claire's tuition, and some, sickeningly, simply unaccounted for. "They promised me, Edward," Grandma whispered, her eyes watering. "Every time. They promised this was for you. I trusted them because they're my children. But they lied over and over again. And I let them." I took her hand and squeezed it gently. "No, Grandma. They used you. That's on them, not you." But inside, my chest burned with a cold fury. $200,000. They had built Claire's degree, Daniel's lifestyle, off money that was supposed to help me build a future. They hadn't just robbed me. They had betrayed her trust, too. That night, Grandma made a decision. "I want to make a change to my will," she said. "If they can lie like this, they can't be trusted. Not with my estate, not with anything." At first, I hesitated. It felt heavy, like crossing a line, and I wasn't sure I was ready to cross. But then I remembered the whispers in the kitchen that night. Daniel laughing that I'd never do anything. My mom's voice saying I was too proud to fight back. They had already crossed every line. All I would be doing was holding them accountable. We set an appointment with her lawyer. The man was older, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for being meticulous. I sat with Grandma as she outlined everything, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. By the time she was finished, the structure of her estate had shifted dramatically. The house, the savings, the remaining investments, everything was placed into a trust with me as the executive. Not because she loved me more, but because she could no longer trust her own children. The lawyer looked at me over his glasses when we signed the papers. "You'll need to be prepared, son. When they find out, there will be trouble." I nodded, the weight of it settling into my bones. Trouble was coming. Yes, but it was trouble they had earned. Meanwhile, my own life was climbing higher. By winter, I had signed my biggest contract yet with a corporation that secured me steady income for years to come. My company was small, but it was strong, and I was no longer just another consultant. I was an owner, a name in my industry. With stability came confidence, and with confidence came preparation. I started keeping records, meticulous ones, copies of Grandma's statements, logs of dates and amounts, even a written summary of the conversation I overheard in the kitchen that night. I wasn't sure how I'd use it yet, but I knew one thing. Information was power, and I had plenty of it now. The first taste of how far I'd come arrived unexpectedly. Daniel showed up at my office one afternoon, unannounced, his usual grin replaced by a tight, uneasy smile. "Ed, hey, place looks nice. You've really done well for yourself." His tone was forced, like he hated admitting it. After some awkward small talk, he dropped his real reason for visiting. "Listen, I was wondering if maybe your firm could help me out. My condo association's been giving me grief over the systems. And well, you're the expert." I leaned back in my chair, studying him. This was the brother who once smirked when I found out about the stolen money, the one who mocked me at Christmas dinner. And now he was sitting across from me, hat in hand, asking for my expertise. I didn't say no outright. Instead, I smiled faintly and said, "I'll think about it. Leave me the details." The look on his face was priceless, caught between relief and the sting of being dismissed. For the first time, I realized just how much the tide had turned. They had stolen from me because they thought I'd always be the weak one. Now they were starting to see I wasn't weak. I was rising higher than they imagined. And when the time was right, when I finally pulled the curtain back on everything they'd done, I wasn't just going to tell them. I was going to show them, piece by piece, exactly how it felt to be blindsided, to be underestimated, to be betrayed. Their downfall was no longer a possibility. It was a plan. The opportunity to act came sooner than I thought. It was the following spring, and my parents were hosting another family gathering at their house, this time for Easter. Normally, I would have declined. By then, I had perfected the art of distance, keeping my interactions with them short and shallow. But Grandma called me and asked if I would come. There was something in her voice, steady but resolute, that told me she wanted me there not for celebration, but for truth. So I went. Walking into that house again, I felt the old familiar air. My mom fluttering about with trays. My dad perched in his chair like a self-appointed king. Daniel bragging to whoever would listen about some deal he was working on, and Claire carefully maintaining her image of poise. It might have looked like a normal family Easter from the outside, but underneath, it felt like a house of cards. Dinner went smoothly at first. They asked me the usual shallow questions about how work was going, and I gave vague answers that downplayed my success. I'd learned that their favorite illusion was that I was still the quiet, struggling one. Let them believe it. It made what was coming even sweeter. It started with Daniel. Between bites of ham, he launched into a story about how expensive maintaining his condo had become. Mortgage payments, utilities, association fees, it all adds up, he said dramatically, like he was the first person in the world to pay bills. My mom rubbed his shoulder, murmuring, "That's why we've always been here to support you." She shot me a look, as if daring me to object, as if I was supposed to sit there quietly and absorb the fact that my parents had poured tens of thousands into him while leaving me with scraps. Grandma's fork clinked against her plate. Her eyes, sharp despite her age, shifted to me. It was the smallest nod, but I understood it. This was the moment. I set my glass down carefully, the sound echoing louder than I expected in the quiet dining room. "Funny," I said calmly. "How support always seems to go in one direction." Daniel's smirk faltered. My mom frowned. "Edward, don't start." But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I reached into my bag and pulled out a neat folder, the same one I'd been building for months. I placed it on the table, sliding it toward Grandma first, then opening it so everyone could see. Bank statements, copies of transfers, notes, dates, everything. "This," I said, my voice even, "is every dollar that Grandma gave you for me. Every dollar you siphoned off for Daniel's condo, Claire's tuition, and whatever else you decided was more important than being honest." The silence was immediate. My dad's face darkened, his jaw tightening as if he could still intimidate me into silence. My mom's hand froze halfway to her glass. Claire's lips parted, but no sound came out. And Daniel? Daniel looked like someone had just pulled the rug out from under him. I leaned forward, my tone still calm. Do you know how much it adds up to? Almost $200,000. $200,000 taken from Grandma under the promise it was for me. Money that could have paid off my loans, secured my future, or even just given me a fair chance. Instead, you fed it into Daniel's lifestyle and Claire's degree, all while telling me to manage just fine. My mom sputtered. Edward, that's not fair. Not fair. I cut in, still quiet, still steady. What's not fair is lying to your own mother. What's not fair is stealing from your son because he was the easiest target. What's not fair is building up 2 of your children while leaving the 3rd to drown. Don't talk to me about fair. Grandma spoke then, her voice breaking. Is it true, Richard? Margaret. She looked at them with tears in her eyes. Did you lie to me? My dad's face reddened. Mother, you don't understand. Edward never needed it. He was fine. The others, I never needed it. I repeated, my voice finally sharpening. You watched me struggle, watched me work nights, take buses, patch up that old Civic with duct tape just to get to work. And all that time, you had money sitting in your accounts. Money that wasn't even yours that you used for everyone but me. Don't you dare tell me I never needed it. Daniel tried to jump in, his voice defensive. Look, Ed, it's not like you were ever left with nothing. You're fine now. Why are you making such a big deal about the past? I turned to him, meeting his eyes. Because the past matters, Daniel. And because you sat there knowing exactly where that money came from and laughed about it. You thought it was a joke. You thought I'd stay quiet forever. But here's the thing. I tapped the folder. I don't just have Grandma's word. I have proof. And if I wanted to, I could take this beyond this table. The room froze again. My parents' faces went pale. They knew what that meant. Fraud, misrepresentation, possibly worse. It wasn't just family drama anymore. It was legal territory. I sat back, folding my arms. But I don't need a courtroom to win, because you've already lost. You've lost Grandma's trust, and you've lost me. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the sound of Grandma quietly pushing the folder back toward me. Her eyes shimmered, but her voice was steady. Thank you, Edward. My dad opened his mouth to speak, but for the first time in my life, I didn't let him. I stood, collected the folder, and looked at all of them. My parents, Daniel, Claire. Their faces ranged from pale shock to forced indifference. But underneath it all, I saw what I wanted. Fear. They had underestimated me, and now they understood that the son they thought they could cheat and dismiss wasn't just standing up. He was holding all the cards. And I wasn't finished yet. The fallout was immediate, like a glass shattering on tile. Grandma didn't wait. The very next week, she called her lawyer and summoned me to sit by her side as she finalized the changes to her estate. My parents, Daniel, and Claire were all officially removed as direct beneficiaries. Instead, everything, her house, her accounts, her investments, was placed into a trust with me as the executive and primary heir. The lawyer explained in clear legal terms that she no longer trusted her children to handle her affairs responsibly. The look on my parents' faces when they found out was something I will never forget. My mother pale with disbelief, my father red with anger, Claire whispering frantically about fairness, and Daniel standing there slack-jawed like the floor had disappeared beneath him. It didn't stop there. Grandma, who everyone assumed would always remain quiet and forgiving, confronted them herself. You lied to me, she said, her voice trembling but firm. You stole from Edward. You used my love as a weapon against him. And for that, you've lost the right to my trust. Watching her say it out loud, looking directly at my parents as tears welled in her eyes, was more powerful than anything I could have done. They tried to argue, of course. My dad shouted that I was manipulating her. My mom pleaded that I didn't need more than my siblings, and Daniel muttered bitterly that it was just money. But it was too late. Grandma had seen the truth, and once she saw it, she couldn't unsee it. In the weeks that followed, the cracks in their perfect facade grew wider. Word spread quietly among the extended family, though not by me, but by Grandma herself. She told her sisters, her cousins, her church friends. Soon, everyone knew what my parents had done. At gatherings, people who used to nod approvingly at my dad now looked at him with suspicion. My mom's reputation for being the caring mother was replaced with whispers about greed. Daniel's smug pride in his condo and car was overshadowed by the knowledge that they were bought with stolen money. Claire, who once carried herself with polished dignity, avoided eye contact at every family function. The irony was that they had always preached about family honor, about keeping up appearances. And now, because of their own actions, their names carried shame instead of respect. As for me, life continued to rise. My firm grew stronger. I paid off the last of my loans, and I bought my first home entirely on my own terms. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine, and every brick felt like a silent victory. Daniel once tried to call me again, fishing for help with his condo's financial issues, but this time, I didn't even answer. Claire sent a long message apologizing for her part, but I left it unread. My parents never apologized at all. Instead, they doubled down, claiming I had turned grandma against them. But the truth was, they had done that themselves. The final moment came one crisp autumn afternoon when Grandma invited me over for tea. We sat together in her garden, the air cool and the leaves bright with color. She looked at me with a mixture of pride and sadness. "You've carried yourself with grace, Edward," she said softly. "They thought they could break you, but you've grown stronger than all of them. I wish it hadn't taken so much pain to get here, but I'm glad you finally see your own worth." I nodded, staring at the folder still tucked safely at home. The evidence that had started it all. I didn't need to use it in court. I didn't need to ruin them with lawsuits. They had ruined themselves, and their punishment was living with the consequences of their betrayal. That evening, as I drove back to my own home, I passed by Daniel's condo. His shiny car sat in the driveway, its hood dented, the paint dulled with time. I realized with a strange calm that everything they had taken from me had turned to dust in their hands. The car, the condo, the false sense of superiority. It had all lost its shine. Meanwhile, what I had built, honestly, quietly, patiently, was only growing brighter. They thought I was weak. They'll never make that mistake again. So, tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have confronted them sooner? Or did I do the right thing, waiting until I had all the cards? I really want to know what you think in the comments below.